When the only constant in life is change, you need to be ready. This is the Man-Made Survival Show.
Hello everyone, my name is Jose Prado, Man-Made Survival. Thanks so much for coming back to the channel and watching this video. So, we know that what has been going on with the coronavirus has pretty much mutated into this police state that we're living in now, right? Because it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you're in Texas or you're in California, the same rules are being followed, or they're being implemented, they're being enforced. And what I want to say is that you don't need to let yourself be controlled by whether the left or the right is doing something, because both political parties are equally, corrupted. And if you don't watch both, one of them is going to stab you in the back, because you're only watching one, the other one gets behind you, and then you get stabbed in the back, and then you act all surprised when you should have been watching the entire time. Now, people are hoping that one day everything is going to get back to normal, that the coronavirus is going to be over with, that people are going to be able to go to the park, they're going to be able to go to the beach, they're going to be able to go to the store without really having to worry about someone telling them they cannot do something. And of course, all of that is creating anger in a lot of people, because a lot of people are ready to get back to work for the simple fact that they don't have money. All right, before everything happened, 40% of Americans couldn't take on a $400 sudden expense. Now take away, they were living paycheck to paycheck. Now take away a paycheck, they don't have any money at all. And that's the same way that a lot of people are finding themselves. Now, this is month number 2 we're going into the lockdown. Some places are opening slowly, but not all the way like it used to be. And a lot of people are still not going back to work simply because their places have shut down permanently because they couldn't pay rent. Now, the next headline that I have for you is pretty much telling of everything that we're talking about, and it's going to set the tone for what we're going to be talking about in the next few videos, because the next few videos are very, very important. And here's the first headline. As states prepare to reopen retail, Newsom says we're not going back to normal. This from sfgate.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom said as many counties around the state prepare to reopen retail for curbside pickup Friday, maintaining physical distance measures will be crucial to reduce the risk of coronavirus spread. Quote, "We're not going back to normal," said Newsom, who gave Tuesday's press briefing from the side of Sacramento business called Display California. "It's a new normal with adaptations and modifications until we get to immunity and a vaccine." All right, so let's just go by what he said, And just by what he said, it should be traveling, at least for the people in California, but really it applies to the entire country, because it's exactly the same mentality that's going through all 50 states. Doesn't matter how populated it is, or, how many cases there really is in that state, in those cities. Because there's some cities that they don't even have one case, and they're still under lockdown. But anyways, the point is that they have said that it would take up to 18 months just for them to have a vaccine, right? But if there's a new strain of the coronavirus, which now the people are coming out and saying there is, that would reset the clock to 0, and that would be another 18 months. So what, we're about 60 days into this thing? Another 18 months away? Pretty soon it'll turn into 2 years. So this is a new reality that people are starting to see come about, and a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people, especially in the government, they love it, because all the control that they ever wanted, they're actually having it now. So all of this has set up the police state that we're living in right now, and it's something that is going to make our life a living hell, because if they don't want to let you go, go out and about, they'll just stop you and fine you, and even though you don't have money because you're not working, or they'll put you in prison because social distancing. And there has been some police officers who have gotten physical against people for social distancing, which is a video that we're going to be showing on later on this podcast. So just think about that. What are we going to do as citizens against that? You know, a lot of people call it tyranny. A lot of people call it human nature. But what are we going to do about it? Are we going to just shut up and sit back down and not do anything about it? You know, people protesting, is that how far is it going to get? And then just go back home and nothing is going to get done? So those are things that we have to think about, because those things are very, very serious. Now, here's my next headline. Prager, our dress rehearsal for a police state. This from Daily Wire. People will argue that a temporary police state has been justified because of the allegedly unique threat to life posed by the new coronavirus. I do not believe that the data will bear that out. Regardless, let us at least agree that we are closer to a police state than ever in American history. Police state does not mean totalitarian state. America is not a totalitarian state. We still have many freedoms. In a totalitarian state, this article could not be legally published. And if it were illegally published, I would be imprisoned and or executed. But we are presently living with all four of the key hallmarks of a police state. Number one, draconian laws depriving citizens of elementary civil rights. Number two, a mass media supportive of the state's messaging and deprivation of rights. Number three, use of the police. Number four, snitches. The reason I believe this a dress rehearsal is that too many Americans appear untroubled by it. The dominant force in America, the left, supports it. And one of the two major political parties have been taken over by the left. Democrats and their supporters have, in effect, announced that they will use state powers to enforce any law they can to combat the even greater existential crisis of global warming. If you love liberty, you must see that it is jeopardized more at any time since America's founding. And that is exactly true. Although I do want to say, like I said in the beginning of this video, do not let yourself be divided between the left and the right, because the right is doing it as well. Texas, you know, a place that called themselves very pro Second Amendment, the sheriff just arrested people. I think it was 8 people over having guns in front of a bar. They have actually deployed a freaking military style tank looking thing because of the people had reopened the business. So, like I said, don't let them divide you between the left and the right. Because if you don't watch them both, one of them is going to stab you in the back. What we have to stand upon is our constitutional rights. If we let those be trampled upon, then we have lost everything. And then America will cease to exist as it was. And it's up to us to take it back to normal. It's not up to them. It's not up to Fauci and the local governments and the governors to say when or what normal is. It's up to us. That's why I encourage you to get involved next time around. There are elections and things to vote on at the courthouse or whatever. But anyways, I want to move on to the next thing. 900 Missouri residents who snitch on lockdown rule breakers fear retaliation after details leak online. This from the Independent. Of course they have to worry about that, you know, because they have to learn to mind their own business. Now, I'm not calling for violence against these people, but if somebody confronts them and saying, hey, why don't you mind your own business? I believe that it is the right thing to do, because it's none of their business what they do or don't do. Because now we have found ourselves in some type of German style sis and snitch hotlines and everything. And that's exactly what we want to avoid. Because if something was to happen, whether, you know, there was a war or there was some kind of dictatorship coming out of the United States, those people will be the first ones snitching on you. So that's why you have to know who your neighbor is and hopefully not live where so many people are. But anyways, I want to move on to the next headline, which, it's kind of, it should worry you that they're doing this. It goes on to say, knock, knock. We're from the government and we want your family's blood. This is from Zero Hedge. The Georgia Department of Public Health has announced that the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is the CDC, and County Health Board are together sending teams of government agents to randomly select homes in 2 Georgia counties. These teams of government agents are charged with asking questions, including about household members' health, and extracting blood from all the people living in the homes. The reason given for the home visit is, you may have guessed it, coronavirus. People who live in the 420 randomly selected homes are free, Truby writes, to refuse the questioning and blood drawing by the government inquisition and autonomy teams to show up at their front door. But in reality, people often find it hard to muster the courage to say no to government agents who accost them in person, asking them to comply. People are intimidated. They think that even if they say no, their request action will still be taken anyway. Plus, they will suffer additional consequences for resisting. That aids police efforts both to get people to say incriminating things and to obtain permission to search people and property, even from people who know evidence of crime is likely to be found. Which, of course, that is the dirtiest thing you can do. A CNN report by Dakin Endon shows that the government team knocks on doors are employing some of the look of cops in their effort to obtain maximum voluntary compliance. Uniforms, government badges, official letters are all part of the process, just like when cops show up for a home search holding a warrant. This looks like a program that could expand countrywide. In fact, it fits in well with moving into a forced vaccination and digital certificates next phase of the coronavirus crackdown. Doing a test run in Georgia makes sense because the CDC headquarters is there. So what's your plan for when government agents come to your and your family? What's your plan for when the government agents come for you and your family's blood? The government inquisition and autonomy teams are acting much like cops, seeking to pressure people into providing private information and even their blood. A generally sound course of action with cops is to not talk to them and not to give them permission to do anything. The same course of action can be employed when confronted by these new door-to-door bloodsuckers, which, of course, that's exactly what you should do. We respect the police, but we will not let them trample upon our rights. That is why it's important for you to learn at least the basic rights that you have in the Constitution. Because you give them the opportunity, they'll trample upon those and they'll force you to comply. You have to stand your ground. Doesn't mean that you break out into violence. It just means that you say no. And if they force you to do something, you take them to court and then you take all the reparations you're entitled to. It doesn't matter if we're in a state of emergency or not. They should not be able to do that. So learn your rights, learn to say no, and even if they get stupid, don't act the same way, because they'll shoot you first and then ask questions later, and they'll back each other up. All right, so the next headline is kind of telling of everything that's going on. So, of course, I'm going to be kind of sarcastic on the first part, but here it goes. George Soros directs more than $130 million in foundation funds to combat coronavirus. This from The Hill. Now, just going off the headline, man, George Soros he wants to do everything possible to help his community, right? I mean, he's donating $130 million. I mean, that's very generous of him. But let's get into why he wants to do it, right? Or how he's going to divide that money. George Soros is directing more than $130 million in funds from his Open Society Foundation towards helping I can't say that word. So affected communities globally amid the coronavirus pandemic. The funding package includes $37 million to support workers and their families across New York, the U.S. epicenter of the outbreak, and home to Open Society's large office, according to its announcement. Soros Group will also be directing $12 million to contribute to emergency relief for affected workers in other U.S. cities and states, and $2.5 million for additional community efforts in Baltimore, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C. Nearly $42 million will be directed to the Foundation's global partners to support low-income workers, protect refugees, and provide access to new vaccines and treatment regardless of economic or citizenship status. Now, up to that point, everything sounds wonderful, right? I mean, George Soros is doing a great thing. But now let's get into the next line into this article. The article goes on to say, another $9 million of the funding will be directed towards the use of mandatory imprisonment and detentions around the world. $3 million will go to local groups countering disinformation in Europe, and $3.5 million will be directed for Southern Africa to support essential emergency service and care work. Now, up to that point, everything sounded wonderful. Now, what in the world could be mandatory imprisonment around the world? You know, only one can speculate because they didn't say why. But George Soros has a long track record of the things that he's done. So for one, we're not stupid, and we can you know, kind of foretell what it's going to be for. Now, if not letting these cops take your blood, you know, and then ask you questions or give you a vaccine when it comes out, and even though you don't want it, if that's part of that, then to me that's a criminal offense, because no one should be able to give money towards the force or the mandatory imprisonment of people, especially in the United States. In the United States. And if he's doing that abroad, then people in those countries should do something about it as well. So I wanna end this video with this headline, because I've said it before in other podcasts, and I'm still gonna say it, that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The next video I'm going to show you, I'm going to let you determine whether or not it's justified what happened in this video. So I'm going to give you the headline. Violent arrest in New York sparks anger over police enforcement of social distancing orders. This from the WashingtonPost.com. And before I take you to that video, this whole social distancing thing is getting out of hand. And once you see that video, I hope you agree that the actions of this police officer were pretty bad. And if we don't keep their power in check, they'll just get more power hungry. That's why you have to know your rights, even though this police officer pretty much assaulted this person. All right. So again, my name is Jose Prado. This is going to be a series of videos. All this information is going to be very, very important because of everything that we're going to be talking about. Everything's connected. And we'll get into more details about a prophecy that I want to share with you. All right. So I'm going to leave it with this video. And remember, always be ready.
Nah, y'all go to jail. Go to jail. What's going on? I didn't do nothing. Don't tell me about that. Move back. Right now. Move the back. Move the back. What you flexing for?
Don't flex. You got a lot of stuff too. Look. He ain't even do nothing. He's balling. He ain't even do nothing. He ain't even do nothing. Look. He ain't even do nothing. He ain't even do nothing. That's right. Back up. And I ain't got none. Suck my. We need mine. Man, this is toys, man. Toys. I'm about to. Yo, I got it uploading right now. It's uploading right now. It's uploading right now. Look at it. Look at the bar.
They acting crazy, man.
Look at it. 6 feet, right? Back up.
The Man-Made Survival Show.